hitting record right now, and I'll let LAS take it away.
Sure. And I'm going to go ahead and drive the bus over here. John's going to jump in with recruitment specific or with student academic affairs specific stuff as we go along. So feel free at any point to stop me if you have questions. We'll, of course, have plenty of time at the end to field questions as well. But if there's anything immediate, feel free to stop throughout. So we're with the College of LAS. My name is Melissa Kuhl. I am the Assistant Director of Marketing. And John is, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, I'm John Labadabo, Associate Director of Recruitment and Admissions here in the College of LAS Student Academic Affairs Office.
And the two of us work incredibly closely together on all of the recruitment and yield strategies throughout the college. So to just kind of kick things off, talking a little bit about the organizational structure from the marketing side of things, we reside within the Dean's office, our Dean being Venetria Patton. Brad, who is also on the call, oversees the entire marketing and communications team as Assistant Dean for Communications and Marketing. And then we have a couple of different teams throughout the Marcom team, one of which is marketing, which I oversee with 3 people reporting to me. Keith Sutterfield, our videographer, is the only person right now on the marketing team because we have 2 vacant positions. But soon we, fingers crossed, will be hiring 2 more marketing specialists, one of which is really focused on recruitment and yield activities. So shameless plug, if you know of anybody who's looking to join a solid team, we will have 2 positions opening pretty soon. Oh, and then I included on the right-hand side here, all of the different people that I'm interacting with on a day-by-day basis throughout the recruitment cycle. So, of course, mentioned John and I work incredibly closely together from the Student Academic Affairs Office side of things. We're always working very closely with the Office of Undergrad Admissions on all of our efforts, sending them through Slate and getting our plans approved. The College of LAS being as big as it is, there are about 100 different unit communicators and advisors that we're communicating with throughout the cycle. And I'll get more into what that means later, but essentially, anytime we have marketing materials that we're having approved by individual units, we are checking with their unit communicators and advisors to make sure that the messaging is correct.
So on the Student Academic Affairs side, it's led by our Associate Dean, Isabel Molina Guzman. She is, I think, just wrapped up her first year in the role. She started as interim, and then she's permanently taken on the role there. And with recruitment and admissions, there's me again, and we have a few individuals on our team. So Kat Bondareva, she's assistant director. She's taking on more of a role with regard to scholarships as well. And then we have a support staff, Allison Branson, who also supports LAS honors in addition to recruitment and admissions. And then we hope to hire an admissions coordinator, which is a new position. And we're getting that underway soon. So hopefully we'll be successful in hiring somebody to start with us in the fall. So that makes up recruitment and admissions within the college office. So again, we work closely with the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, as well as Melissa in LAS Marketing Communications, and then LAS academic departments and units to really help recruit, admit, and enroll first year and transfer students to the university.
And John and I kind of both alluded to this as we were explaining exactly what our organizational structure is, what we do. But really the primary challenge that we face within the College of LAS is just how large it is. LAS is a huge college. We've got 70 plus majors. In this last cycle, we had nearly 11,000 people admitted to the college. With 20,000 applications. And when everything shakes out throughout the summer, we'll end up right around that 2,600 mark for freshmen. If you're including transfer, we're looking at like 3,000 people for our incoming class. So we're just a really big college. And when we're talking about marketing specifically, it's difficult to kind of figure out, how to describe 70 different majors, especially on the prospective side, to people who may have never even heard of a lot of our majors. We are lucky in that we've got, majors like biology, history, that people are taking these kind of classes in high school, but we also have a lot of things like linguistics and geography and geographic information sciences, where a lot of that doesn't necessarily have as much meaning to an 18-year-old. So we have to figure out a way to tell them exactly what that means. One of the ways we kind of circumnavigate that, though, on the marketing side is that we try to do everything to scale. So every major within our college gets a welcome email. So everybody admitted to the college hears from us at some point, hears from their department saying, welcome, we're so glad to have you. But we make those templates incredibly similar. So we're not redesigning every single time we have an email going through. And we work really closely, I mentioned this a little while ago, with all of the units to specify the messages to make sure that we're telling their story in a way that makes sense and is accurate. Another thing that we do, and we'll get into this a little bit more when I talk about outcomes, is that every year when we are going through and creating our marketing plan for the upcoming cycle, we figure out specific units and populations that have need across the college. Specifically, then throughout the next cycle, we will do dedicated messages for those units and really put a lot more of our efforts into the units that need that extra help. So an example is like psychology is such a big department, and we will always get students in psychology, so they don't necessarily need the extra boost. But last year, communication was one of the majors that we identified that had a little bit more need. So we sent out more messages for communication to accepts over the last year, and ended up having, I think, plus 12 accepts over last cycle because of those dedicated outcomes. Do you have something, anything you want to add there, John?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Certainly size is the big thing, because certainly more, inquiries, more students who want to consider our various programs means more questions, right? More communication back and forth. And staying on top of that is always a challenging thing. And certainly as we continue to see more applications come in, more admits, and certainly looking to enroll, more students, and the right types of students in that sense who could benefit from our programs that we offer. Certainly we'll continue to, face various challenges that come our way going forward.
One other challenge that we wanted to touch a little bit on as well is that our units are very academically diverse. Throughout the College of LAS, we have 3 major buckets of the humanities units, life, physical, and mathematical science units, and social and behavioral science units. And I included just a couple of examples of what falls under those specific units up here. But as you can see, it kind of runs the gamut. You have everything from gender and women's studies to chemical and biomolecular engineering to economics. So the fact that we're very academically diverse poses a challenge, because in a lot of ways, John and I have to kind of be subject matter experts in a lot of different things. We do rely on our units a lot, though, to overcome this challenge. So like I said earlier, with our marketing plans, we're constantly running all of our materials through the advisors, who are those real subject matter experts, so that we don't have to know everything from like biology to Asian American studies, for example. But similarly, we're constantly thinking of equity across our college, because if we have 70 majors, we want to make sure that everybody's kind of having equal play. But it's difficult to do that when you have majors that vary so much in size. So I wrote down a couple data points here. But for an example, we had 1840 admits to biology last year. So like nearly 2,000 admits. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, we had 12 admits to Asian American studies. So trying to kind of thread the needle where we're giving Asian American studies as much play as biology, despite them, having that huge difference in the number of admits, is definitely a challenge that we're consistently thinking about. I know that that's also an issue for OUA, so shout out to OUA for working very closely with us on trying to figure out with data polls exactly what that means. So we definitely don't want to bog down your data team with requests for like units with like 4 admits, but it's definitely kind of, like I said, a fine needle to thread. Any other thoughts on that one, John?
Just looking at data that comes in from campus, the OUA perspective, and then our perspective as well. Since we are the largest academic community, it is interesting comparing and contrasting, because since we're the largest academic community, oftentimes you know, we see variance, but invariably, you know, when our programs are impacted, when our numbers are impacted, campuses numbers are impacted. And so we look at both, you know, from the OUA side and then the college side, and then we look at the different academic communities when comparing across programs. And so it can all be a challenge because of the size, as was mentioned earlier.
Yep, and that's a good segue because you started talking about kind of looking at the data as far as numbers that are coming in. And just to touch a little bit on some of our outcomes before I get over into measurement, specifically looking at data, we definitely kind of look a lot at the specific numbers of admits to give us, well, admits, accepts, enrollment in the end to kind of give us a sense on how we're doing and what we need to change for the next cycle. So because we work to scale, we focus on units with need. We kind of have that strategy playing behind us at all points. We actually had our largest number of accepts this last year, which is awesome. And we're constantly thinking of those specific areas of growth. So one thing I wanted to point out, which is on the left side, is that over the past year, we had a specific goal of increasing our URM students to get our underrepresented minority students back up. And it wasn't necessarily the highest amount ever, but it's the first time that it's been up in years, a pretty significant amount. So in the accept account by day, the orange line is this year, whereas the 2 bottom lines were the prior 2 years. The top 2 lines were pre-pandemic. And I know that this is something that a lot of colleges across the board are seeing. Obviously, the university is as a whole, but it was really nice that, we identified we want more URM students, and we saw that we got more. And there are some ways that we kind of do that with marketing to really target our messages home for URM students. This year, we experimented a little bit with text messages, specifically to first-generation students. And I included an example of what that looked like here, but really just making sure that the students know that we're here for them and ready to help them. And we also did like a dedicated campaign for women and underrepresented minority students in our CS Plus X programs, where we partnered with the College of Engineering to get that messaging out. I don't know if anybody's on from engineering, so if you are, yay, thank you. But all of those kind of efforts definitely paid off. Transfer students also were up this past year, another specific audience that we kind of targeted. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, John?
Yeah, certainly with the transfer guarantee, we've seen a lot of traction here and there, and we've always tried to make space for students if they're not admitted to their first choice, maybe an alternate choice, or maybe a program that they can see work with their, professional goals. Even if it's not their first or sometimes second choice. If they're admissible somewhere, or if they have a transferable course in one area, we've been able to find space for them. And so I think this is good as we continue to get the word out and messaging with regard to transfer students, especially first generation transfer students. And we see a lot of those students come through. It's really paramount that we do our best to continue to touch all bases and reach out the best way possible to let them know that, we have a variety of programs that can be an opportunity for them to bridge the gap from their previous transfer institution to College LES at Illinois as well. And so I think moving forward, as we continue to expand, it's getting the right, fit individuals who could see themselves succeeding at Illinois. The opportunity to get in the hopper, so to say, to make sure that they're in our communication plans, and we are out we are, reaching out to them and letting them know that we're here for them. And some of them don't know that, they could very well be admitted to a particular area. They have one transferable course and a 2.7 GPA, right? So it's just getting that messaging out, and we're really doing our best to see what we can do to expand that, and hopefully those students will come here and stay here and persist to graduation.
Definitely. Well, the last thing we wanted to chat just a little bit about then was how we measure these specific goals, successes. Well, how we identify success, I suppose. Even though it's the second bullet point that I listed, I feel like accepts and enrollment, we've kind of been hitting a lot on that throughout the presentation, but that's kind of really when we're comparing year to year, how we're figuring out the success of our efforts. We're constantly looking at things like our melt percentage over the summer. And I am always looking at Tableau, OUA's, big old tracking system to see how many accepts we have at any point in time. We provide weekly updates to our college leadership, including the dean. So she always has a pulse on what our accepts are looking like. And then over the summer, which I'm about to dig into this, we do a big analysis of all of our efforts, taking a look at like emails, how many people clicked on our emails, how many people opened them, which ones perform better. So getting all of that data, analyzing it, and then utilizing it to kind of build out our strategy for next year. And then John and I, go ahead.
Well, I'll just add that because of our size, I think it is easier for us to look at, quantitative numbers. So a lot of it, as Melissa mentioned, is quantitative. We're looking at that information. We do still look at qualitative information too. So, we get feedback from students, whether it's they're responding to our email communications, or, they're in our presentations or giving us feedback that way. Or even, the accept, surveys, the decline surveys that, we'll get through OUA and whatnot. So I do think it's majority quantitative, but we're still looking at other approaches as well to gather all feedback so we can plan effectively for the upcoming cycle.
Definitely. Yeah, and I know John and Isabel have conversations with department heads across the board about how they envision their specific units looking over the next few years. So we're using that kind of qualitative information as well to kind of help dictate what units we need to focus on at any point in time. So really it's the partnerships that we have across the college that are helping us out with that. Yeah, so that is it for our presentation. That's what we've got. I can go ahead and stop sharing screen and open up the floor to questions if that works for people.
Quiet today. Everybody's quiet today.
We just wowed everybody with all of the information.
It was great. It was very great.
Can you talk a little bit more about the text messaging to students? How long have you been doing that? And do you feel like that has received a better response from students versus the email?
That's a great question. I'll start obviously with how long we've been doing it. I think we did our first text message, I want to say back in 2020, maybe it might have been 2021. So just a couple of years. But we've really been focusing on specific audiences and specific messages, often, not always, but often with some sort of deadline attached to them. And it's a little hard to tell exactly how they've been received because we don't have as much tracking for all of that, because we don't necessarily expect somebody to click through or to respond to a text message. Based on just looking at the inbox for when we send out the text messages and receive responses, things seem to go okay.
How did they give, is that part of their like general interest form that they've given you their cell phone to receive a text? I mean, how do they opt into something like that?
OUA can probably comment a little bit more because we're going specifically through them anytime we want to send out a text message. But I will say we've only ever done it on the yield side and on the melt side. I don't think that will do it on the recruitment side just because it may come off as a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah,
It's more once they're at that point in the funnel.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, before students are admitted, before they apply, we do ask them when they sign up for more information if they like to opt into texting. But in order to have their number and they have to have opted in. So there are a lot fewer names in the system prior to being admitted. Once they're admitted, we do have their phone number, and I don't remember if they, in the application, Doug, do they opt in at that point to texting? So we have a lot more names after they're admitted. So Melissa, yours was more like a text message, more text and then a link to more information, not like a one-on-one conversation with someone.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
This past cycle, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we did just 2 text messages. One of them was that URM message specifically to try to just show we're here to support you. And then the second one we did was related to our scholarship deadline. And any person who received a scholarship but did not yet like accept the scholarship and fill out the form was identified for that.
That's great. That's great. Thanks.
I don't want to get too nitty gritty or take up time, but how do you send the text then? What procedure do you use? Because it would be, is it something that is going through the admissions office to send the text then?
Yes. Yep. It's
Okay.
you create it through Slate like you would an email. It's a different field and
Okay, so it
submit
is
it through
Slate
Basecamp.
though, and then that way you can track who received it and, okay,
Yeah,
Yep.
for all intents and purposes, it behaves like an email in Slate. But I would also like to add that it also carries a point, per send out cost that email doesn't. So, we have to have an account that, that will eat out of that one, depending on how many text messages you send.
And I did put a link to more information about like how to send a text message, all of that through OUA. It's in the training section. I think there's a section specifically on texting. So if that's helpful to you, Cindy.
And it's definitely something we use as strategically as possible, where we're hitting specific targets with specific messages, mostly so we're not overwhelming our entire, what did I say, that we had 11,000 admits earlier? Obviously, that also wouldn't be cost effective because to Thomas's point, there's a cost associated with it as well. But definitely making sure that we're not sending them too many text messages.
that's great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm happy to talk about it more if you're interested or have any follow-up questions. And obviously, to Laura's point, they're available as well from the OUA side.
Anything else from anyone? Well, I think we're good then. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. And these will all be up on the website later on, so you can view them all. So have a great day.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone. Take
you.
care.